Got it. Guys, just want to introduce myself. I'm Jonathan Redpath, and I'm the mentor actually for the BCC program. Everybody just calls me Johnny, so please do. It's good to see so many of you in tonight, just as I kind of say there. An amazing night outside, and kind of like users now sitting inside to kind of go through class tonight, so well done there. Amanda was saying there that there is a few private learners in here, so this actually won't actually qualify for yourselves. It is the Belfast City Council candidates I'm actually talking to at the moment. So what way that kind of works is if you remember applying for it and the employer and yourself had to fill in the application form, that means that you're actually part of the Belfast City Council group. Okay. So there's a few things I just kind of want to go over. I'm not going to take up too much time. I know Amanda has a lot to get through here tonight, so I just want to take a few minutes here. Just attendance. I just want to remind you all that attendance is 80% for the Belfast City Council group. Okay. So just be aware of that, and if there obviously things do pop up, we're well aware that things do pop up at the very last minute and something you just can't attend class, but just make sure you contact Amanda either by text message or email and just let her know so she can actually put you off the actual checklist for that evening. So just on that kind of note as well, just obviously just make sure that attendance is kind of kept up to that standard, because it will go against you towards the end of the actual completing the actual program. Also mentoring then too, I've kind of just been trying to kind of reach out to you. I've been seriously busy. The playwork sector and CCLD sector is going crazy at the moment. There is so many posts out there. There's so many employers contacting me to kind of get people actually into actually just in the placements. So there's a serious amount of jobs out there. So there's at the moment, and they're all looking kind of like level 5s, they're looking level 3s. We are running an employment academy, and we're doing it for the needs of the employer. So if you are struggling with staff in any way within your setting, or if you are looking for staff yourself, or you're actually looking for work yourself as a level 5 or level 3, give me a shout, because there's a serious amount of employers really need staff on the floor at the moment. So things have really changed over even the last 2 weeks. Every day there's an employer contacting me to kind of get this up and running and to kind of get everybody within that setting. So as I said, just contact me if there is any needs there, whether it's your business or whether it's personal needs as well. Mentoring then is I'm here 24/7. Just give me a shout at any stage. If you need anything, I'll just respond to me. Give me an email across. If you're struggling with coursework, if you're struggling with the actual job yourself, if you're struggling with even just trying to obviously your daily life, and also struggling with your just obviously the course and the amount of work that you're kind of going through, please give me a shout. So it is, and I will kind of pop in to these groups if that's okay, Amanda, probably once a month or every 2 months. So it isn't just really checking with you guys. Please don't feel as if you're on your own. We know how hard this is. We know how hard it is to manage work, to kind of manage home life, and to go through your level 5. And there is a lot of kind of work on us. So please, as I said, do not feel alone. Just send me an email across. Johnny, I need a one-to-one. We'll arrange a one-to-one Zoom call, and we'll just talk through things. What we kind of go through in mentoring is if you're struggling with even financially, if you're struggling with housing, just in confidence building, looking at all those areas within your life, and kind of like we can go through that and give you that wee bit of added support. You do have that for the whole program, and I'm well aware of kind of mentoring now over the last 2 years that at this stage you mightn't feel as if you do need that support, but as the months go on and the kind of the work's kind of starting to kind of needs to be handed in, we definitely need to kind of look at that, and we can work on goals and just set goals monthly, even just try to get even 1 or 2 units kind of completed and just put no small tasks in place. It has helped candidates in the past, and you're well aware, Amanda, that we have had a few candidates that that have struggled towards the end, and by just putting that wee bit of support in there, we've kind of got them through their level 5. All right. Everybody should have then received the link to the Engage app. Okay, and that's everybody in the Belfast City Council group should have received that link to the Engage app. Can you please just even go back and look at your emails, download the app. You'll kind of see the People First logo just on the actual app on the Google Store or the iPhone Store or the Apple Store. So just download that. You should have your login details. Would have been Craig that sent it across to you. That way, then we can kind of like, Amanda's going to be in that group as well now, so we can then kind of communicate in that group. Then if you just need that one-to-one support, give me a shout out. Kind of saying things aren't going well, just give me a private message. All right. Guys, have you any questions for me at all? No? Perfect. And he's getting on well. Obviously, this is your third kind of like session with him on Zoom. It is obviously a lot different than face to face. So it is. And if you are struggling with any IT issues, I don't think there has been, Amanda. But if you are struggling with any IT issues, or you're just not getting the grasp of ICANN, or obviously using Zoom, also give me a shout as well. We'll give you a wee bit of support. All right, guys, it was lovely to meet you all. Enjoy the course. It's intense. You've got a fantastic teacher here. I just want to say Amanda is up there. So she is. So she's really good at her job. She's a wealth of kind of information, and use that there to your advantage. And like she is fantastic within the sector, and she still has that compassion and passion for all the users within the sector too.
Yeah, and like I think I would just sort of back up what Johnny said. Obviously, all the lovely things about me, but definitely he's been able to provide to people, and we definitely have examples where people have just been struggling with work and with the course load, and he has sort of been able to step in and kind of just nearly provide that sort of weekly support to them. And we certainly got all that anecdotal feedback at the end of the first group, Johnny, where people said that they would have left after about the sort of third, around this time when sort of they're seeing the work ramp up, that they would have left if it hadn't have been sort of for Johnny's support and basically holding their hand, as it were. I suppose, and it goes the same. I know there's some of you guys aren't under the Belfast City Council, and just to sort of, you know, never hesitate to shout. I work exactly the same way as Johnny. You know, drop me a message or drop me an email. I do tend to teach quite a few evenings, so some nights you might try and contact me and it could take me a while to come back to you, but I'll always get back to you the next day or as soon as I can. But don't ever be sort of sitting being stuck. That's what we're here for. Johnny and I just want to see you complete. That's what we want. So anything that we can do to support you, you just shout.
Yeah. What I would say too, and I completely agree with everything Amanda said there, but just don't let it get out of hand. Don't kind of say that you can't contact me and leave it to the last minute where you're now sitting with maybe 10 units, or also obviously not 10 units, but you may be sitting with maybe 5 units to kind of hand in, and everything, you just kind of feel really overwhelmed. Please don't get to that stage. As I said, the playwork sector, CCLD sector is just crazy at the moment. I'm running in and out of academies all the time, but that doesn't mean that I haven't forgot about you guys. Please shout out to me first. So it's because I probably won't get the chance to kind of go through everyone is obviously because it's a large group. So please let me know before it does get out of hand. And never, if you kind of feel as if it's getting too intense and you feel as if you want to give up, please don't before talking to me. So let's just reach out to me and kind of like, and we'll kind of go through things. We always come across barriers in our lives, and we always kind of feel as if it's overwhelming. Never get to that stage, because it can always be worked through. And we just put small things in place. All right. Guys, I want to wish you all the best. And Amanda, thank you very much for taking time out there tonight.
Nope, no problem. You're very welcome. No problem. See you soon, Johnny. Take care.
See you soon. All the best. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Hi guys, great to see everybody. So we're recording already. I know there's sort of a few yous were handbraking in there at the end. I know what it's like with work, but you know we're always recording the classes. If at any time you're in class and you see that it's not recording, don't forget to poke me or prod me and remind me that we need to be recording it. So what I wanted to do tonight was go through the safeguarding unit. I think we've sort of had a difficult enough sort of couple of first classes, and it's kind of deliberate. Obviously with that first class, and we looked at the minimum standards, and for a lot of you that was your first time, I suppose, being aware of that and being aware of that documentation. And then we went into last month where we started looking at staff supervisions, and I know by the feedback that you give me, the majority of the majority of you aren't doing staff supervision, so I know that that's all completely new to you. So let's hopefully tonight, not that it's an easier night, because it's obviously not a lovely topic to be talking about, but hopefully you'll find the questions a bit more sort of straightforward, and it's stuff that you're kind of doing day in and day out. And just remember what I said at the first class. You know, I find it takes people about 4 or 5 sets of questions to get into a groove. So if you're sitting at the minute and you're kind of panicking, now's the night. Start from tonight's questions. Don't worry about what we've covered the first two classes. I catch up with you in the long grass. And just if you need any support at any time, you know just to shout. So let me get our PowerPoint up here. So I'm going to do a wee bit of a review here just at the beginning. Everybody seeing my screen okay? Yep, perfect, perfect. It's all silence, but I can see a few heads nodding. You know to unmute yourself at any time you want to speak, or if I'm going too fast or there's something you don't understand. So within the Zoom function as well, there's a chat function. So you can send a chat to the whole group, or you can send a chat privately to me. So don't ever be shy. Or again, just use the WhatsApp. I generally always have it beside me and send me a private WhatsApp saying, didn't understand the last 5 minutes. I can go back through things again, or I can arrange to meet you in a one-to-one. So hopefully this review here is just kind of a bit of a consolidation of where we're kind of at. So first homework was based on the 16 minimum standards. And I think I have nearly everybody's in, or you have sort of shown me a handwritten version of it. You're just getting it typed up at the minute. I kind of just want to stress again, 16 minimum standards. Quite a few of you, when you started answering your staff supervision homework, started talking about the 17 minimum standards. That's health and social care, and you were taking that from the textbook, the chapter of the book that I sent you. Remember, I said it's very English of itself, so you be very, very wary about where you're taking your information from. Generally, what I send you on a slide, that's the most up-to-date Northern Ireland, all singing, all dancing. If I'm sending you a chapter of that book, it tends to be very English of itself. That's the only way to describe it. So make sure that you're not writing in any of your future homeworks about 17, or I think there's another health and social care. I think they've like 22 standards. Here in Northern Ireland, we have 16 minimum standards. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask anybody to call out all 16. The second homework was to complete the 5 questions. And that's one of those ones, I'm not overly fussed about the second one at this stage. My main bit was that you went away and you started doing staff supervisions. I know that wasn't going to be relevant to everybody because some of you are preschool or playgroup and you are probably only back in this week, maybe even next week. But it's just so that it's really fresh in everybody's heads and we get the ball rolling, I suppose, sooner rather than later. I will come back to chat about all of this again at Christmas time. So don't worry if you don't get it started in August, you don't get it started in September. I'll be chasing you up as well, just to make sure that you're getting those experiences. I've got everybody's initial professional discussion done, bar a few. I know a couple of you have dates in the diary with me. Some of you were struggling because you weren't back in work yet. So hopefully we'll get all of those sort of nailed down over the next couple of weeks. If we've got yours done, thank you again for your time. Please thank your boss again. It was great to sort of get seeing everybody one-to-one and just get having a chat about everything that's involved in the qualification. And I think most of you, they were all about 10, 15 minutes long. It's not anything overly long. And I'll promise you there was no tricky questions. CVs, job descriptions. Some of you have been asking for templates and some of you have been sending me stuff through, and that's all great. Just make sure that your CV talks about your deputy manager role or your management role or your trainee role or whatever title you want to give yourself. There's too many of you are sort of sending me CVs and it basically talks about you being a nursery assistant. I can't have you on the programme if you're a nursery assistant. So you need to say that you're a nursery assistant with management duties and maybe list what they are in your CV. So just something to keep at the back of your head. I'm hoping everybody has signed up for Casper and signed up for Playboard and that you're getting those emails. So Casper sends you a weekly email and Playboard, it's monthly. Dates for the rest of the year, I sent those out to everybody. So we're the 14th of September, 12th of October, 9th of November, 14th of December. So you'll sort of get in the picture now of how I work. I tend to work to sort of the end of a year, end of a term. And then somewhere in December, then I send you the dates for January to June of next year. And then we can debate whether we're taking the summer off as summer holidays, because generally I don't have classes over the summer. It was only because you guys were very special. So you're my only class this month that I get to torture. Everybody's back in again in September. Generally, you all now know how busy it is to try and do work and kind of be at your own work. So that's dates for the rest of the year. Classes are always 6:30 to 9:30. We'll always record them. Just make sure that you do get watching it. And sometimes for those of you that are maybe struggling with questions, I know some nights we can go through an awful lot of stuff and I'm firing out a lot of information. Don't be shy about kind of going back and listening back to just parts of the video. It might refresh your mind, about the questions and about what has been talked about. So if you're referencing, this was something else I was starting to see come through on the second homework. So if you remember on the first one, I give you the references, I give you the link to the minimum standards, and your other reference was your workplace policies and procedures. So that's supposed to say example. That's the link there. So if you talk anywhere about standard 10, standard 1, standard 2, you need to throw in that link to show that you're referencing the minimum standards. Don't be afraid to reference workplace policies or procedures. And you've seen there with the staff supervision bit, I sent you the chapter of the book about staff supervisions. It really was only for the 3 about the developmental models. Some of you felt that you had to talk about everything that I kind of sent you in that, and that's not what it was for, and I maybe should have made it clearer. But if you're referencing that book, or anytime I've scanned in all the chapters and send you a chapter, that's the name of the book. It's the Level 5 Diploma in Leadership for Health and Social Care, 2nd edition paperback by Tilmouth and Wallington, we're going to pronounce that. So just make sure you're throwing that in at the bottom as well. Would that be useful if I threw that into chat? Whoops. I'll just throw it into chat here now, just so that you can nearly sort of like just copy and paste it onto something. Give me 2 seconds. That's it in chat there if you just want to pick it up from there, like a copy, and just paste it onto a blank page, because you'll find you're just repeating yourself with those references. They should be in nearly every sort of set of questions. Okay, share the screen again. Fix my spelling mistake. Okay, any questions then at this stage? Everybody happy enough about where we're at and that it's class number 3 and we've got our dates for the rest of the year? Perfect. Okay, so we need to look at safeguarding, and this unit did change. So if any of your colleagues have done their level 5 previously, you'll notice a big difference between the old, what I call the old safeguarding unit, and this new one. So this is all based on the new standards. So these are our learning outcomes. So you'll sort of see as we go through each class, I kind of always start off the class. Basically, I suppose, tell you what we're going to be covering tonight. Then we covered in class, and then we check in again at the end. I suppose where I need you to be thinking at this stage, like when you heard safeguarding, what do you think you need to know, or what do you think that you already know? So at this stage, just to be sort of thinking about where you're at with safeguarding, you definitely don't need to be a designated officer or anything like that. So the learning outcome, the first one there is to understand the impact of current legislation that underpins the safeguarding of children. So it is what it says on the tin. We're going to look at the legislation behind it. So I'm going to warn you in advance, it's a fairly boring section, but we'll whip through it as quickly as we can. It's legal stuff. The second one then is, how do you support the review of policies and procedures for safeguarding? And for most of you, that's probably going to be something that's completely new. It's not part of your job to review a policy at the end of the year, but I'm going to get you involved in a bit of an audit, and you're going to take standard 1 and standard 2, and you're going to do an audit of your setting, just line by line what the minimum standard says, and that will be you starting to look to see, do your policies and procedures match everything that's in the minimum standards? And the third one, be able to lead practice in supporting children's well-being and resilience. That's probably the very practical part of it. You know, how do you make sure that children's mental health is okay? You know, we're going to look at the whole area of resilience. And what they've also built into this unit is they want to see you take some safeguarding resources or materials and actually sort of deliver it to a team of staff. So I'm going to give you lots of slides that you'll be able to create your own PowerPoint. I'm going to recommend an online course. You might want to get staff to do that, and you're going to do a quiz with them afterwards. but it basically sort of puts the ball back in your court that it's not enough to send staff off to do their safeguarding training, that you tick the wee box and that's them okay for 3 years. This unit is getting you thinking about how will you make sure that they, I suppose, continue to look at safeguarding and continue have it at the sort of the front of their minds. Again, for some of you that in your setting, safeguarding is possibly something that is a daily, weekly occurrence. You maybe have children on the looked after register, you know, you're maybe liaising with social workers. Some of you will be in settings where there's never been a safeguarding concern, and that's where some of this can seem sort of quite alien as well, but that's what we're planning to go through this evening. So even just take a few seconds yourself to think, are you now sitting here going, yeah, I'll be able to watch EastEnders in the background here because I know all of this? Or, oh my gosh, what do you mean she's talking about law? And what do you mean this word resilience? Like, where are you just kind of at with your own knowledge? And I don't need any of you to share it with me at this stage, but it just means when we come to the end, we can look to see, has tonight answered all of your questions? Or is there still things that you're not sure about? So I was at training myself probably about 12 years ago, about that 12 years ago. And this was the question that came up. It was the NSPCC delivered it. And I didn't know the answer. So I now start off all my sort of safeguarding training with this question. What I'm just going to do is pop you into some breakout rooms, just so you can have a bit of a natter with each other, say hello, chat about how you have been kind of getting on so far. But I want you to have a chat. And if you've got your phone or your computer handy, you know, start Googling and see if you get a bit of an answer. But I want you chatting about what's the difference between safeguarding and child protection, or is it actually exactly the same thing? It's just got two different names depending on who you're talking to. So does that seem okay as a wee bit of an icebreaker just to get you chatting? So just going to pop you into some breakout rooms, and I'll give you about 5 minutes just so you can have a bit of a chat with each other as well. And I'll put you in quite small breakout rooms so that you all get a chance to talk. Yeah, so it should be 4 participants in each room here, and I'll call you back in again in about 5 minutes. Hey, Lynn, is that not working for you? You're on mute there at the minute. Hi guys, it just takes a few seconds for everybody to pop out of those rooms. Guys, just takes a few seconds for everybody just to pop out. I think that's everybody back out now. So give me 2 seconds just to, oops. Oops. Okay. So how did you find that question? Was there a difference? What was sort of the overall opinion? Is there a difference between safeguarding and child protection? Yeah, getting a few nods of the heads here. Don't worry, I'm not going to pick on anybody sort of for this bit. I suppose it's just to get us thinking about the language sort of before we start. So basically they would chat about, or the NSPCC would chat about safeguarding is everything that you do to minimize any harm coming to a child. So that's by putting your plans and your procedures in place. So anything that you do to protect them is called safeguarding. And basically child protection is the term given when you need to take action, that you become aware of something or a child has disclosed something to you that a child is being harmed or maybe being harmed. So just that there is a sort of subtle difference with it. And I always sort of explain it like safeguarding is like an umbrella. It's all those things that you do, you know, the lock on the door, you know, who comes to pick up a child, doing your risk assessments, all of those things that you do. And then child protection is what you need to do then if you become aware of something. So it was just to sort of set the scene and obviously get you chatting to each other as well. So let's get, so doing it slightly differently tonight, just to see if it sort of helps you a wee bit. What I'm going to do in each section is I'm going to show you what the questions are, and then we're going to go through how you answer what, you know, the topics, I suppose, under those questions. And then we're going to look at the questions again. So the two questions that you have under that first learning outcome is 1.1, can you outline the current legislation and best practice guidelines? And 1.2, can you analyse how national and local legislation, guidance and exemplars of policies and procedures, and they actually tell you what they want you to look at, the SBNI Strategic Plan 2018 to 2022 for safeguarding informs your work with children. So don't worry, I know this is all very wordy, but we'll break it down and we'll look at what that means, what you need to be looking at and what you need to be covering. So what I kind of want to start just with here is this slide. So whenever I send you on everything, you get a copy of the PowerPoint. What I have with this PowerPoint here is clickable links. Do you see the way the little arrow becomes a hand? It just means you can click on any of those links if you want to actually go and get the original document. Probably no real reason that you would ever need to, but it's just in case you want to get a bit more information. So any of those ones that are orange are all clickable links. But what we're going to do here now is go through each one of these in turn, and I'm going to give you the edited highlights, the key bits of information that you need to know. You don't need to know much more than what I'm actually going to put on these next few slides. So all of the slides you'll have a copy of. So it's just about, let's see where we're kind of at with all of this legislation, but you've got clickable links there if you want to do a bit more reading, but what's on the slide should be more than enough to answer any of the questions. So Children's Northern Ireland Order 1995. Anybody, is that piece of even legislation familiar to some people? Have you heard about it before? Do you remember covering it when you did your level 3? Nobody really? A few? Okay, so Children's Northern Ireland Order 1995. So this basically piece of legislation that states that the welfare of the child must be of the paramount consideration, and it is this essential principle which underpins this guidance. Within this legislation, a child is a person under the age of 18 years. So that's probably a really key bit to be remembering. A child is anybody under the age of 18 according to this legislation. So think about where that maybe impacts on some of your policies. Emma, is there any of your policies that talk about what an 18-year-old can do or can't do?
No, it just, can you hear me?
Yep.
No, it's just in our policies that about pickup, you have to be
Brilliant.
over 18 to back the child.
Brilliant. Emma, that's exactly what I was hoping that you were going to say. So hopefully what you should be starting to think about as we go through each of these bits, well, what does this mean in our workplace? And it's exactly things like that, Emma. You know, even if, unless I'm the parent, but you know, if I'm going to pick up my baby brother or baby sister and I'm 16, I'm not allowed to. It's where this all sort of ties in together. It sets out parental responsibilities and the rights and duties and powers of public authorities to support children. So it's the Northern Ireland Executive for us here in Northern Ireland, and it's all through the Department of Health. They are responsible for child protection in Northern Ireland. So they set out all of our policies, all of our legislation, any guidance, it all comes through the Department of Health. So just so that you're aware of sort of which branch of government. And basically what the order then kind of sort of links to is the Safeguarding Board for Northern Ireland. And I suppose they're there as like an umbrella body, and they used to be split out into sort of like northern, southern, eastern and western, but they're now just known as the Safeguarding Board for Northern Ireland. And they're basically there to protect and promote the welfare of children. So we just need you to be familiar with who all of these organisations are, as well as the legislation as well. So we've got our Safeguarding Board Act of Northern Ireland of 2011. So it's another newer piece of legislation. And this basically led to the creation of the Safeguarding Board for Northern Ireland. Again, anybody heard of the Safeguarding Board for Northern Ireland? Yeah, a couple of you, and it maybe has come up when you've done safeguarding training. What I just did there was just threw up a screenshot of their website. So I would definitely sort of put that down on one of your things to do, maybe even before you start tackling the questions and tackling your homework. Get yourself onto sort of their website and just be a bit familiar with what is there. And they generally have like sort of there's publications on it, and there's resources, there's information that's maybe more child friendly if you were wanting to explain something to a child. But it's just well worth having a nosy. I know I think there is a way, there used to be a way you could actually be sort of on like their mailing list. And I know I've attended training in the past that has been run by SBNI, and it was really, really, really good training. So again, it's just one of those organizations to be aware of, that they're there in the background, and it's just where all of the sort of resources and support is coming from in the background. That's our Safeguarding Board Act, Northern Ireland 2011. We've got our Children's Services Cooperation Act of 2015. So again, this is a Northern Ireland piece of legislation. If you go to the textbook that I have and you call up the safeguarding unit, none of this is in it. So well-being of children and young persons, and they sort of talk about what is meant by sort of well-being and what's intended by the Act. It talks a lot throughout it all about cooperation. So it's basically saying that, you know, as the Northern Ireland Executive, they've got to be cooperating with the Department of Health. They've got to be cooperating with Safeguarding Board NI. They've got to be cooperating with you guys. And it's also about sort of that interagency cooperation. And we'll come to that when we look at some of the maybe the high profile cases. But certainly if you look at any of those sort of case reviews where a child has died under very tragic circumstances, it's generally because there hasn't been cooperation between departments. You know, school never let anybody know what was going on. Hospitals didn't let anybody, the police didn't let anybody know. So this is basically, I suppose, to make sure we've got that sort of joined up conversations going on. So they talk about the children and young people strategy, and we'll come to that as well. But basically, it's the Northern Ireland Executive's job to outline a strategy and what is the priority for children's well-being. It's about sharing of resources, pooling of funds. They report on it as well. Basically, you know, what impact have they had on children's lives? You know, how many children have been supported? Maybe it's about children going into care. It'll be on a whole host of things, but it's really just to let us know what our stats are. Again, that there should be a programme for government, that basically this is not something that just sort of sits on a shelf somewhere. This is a living, breathing document. Plenty of guidance then about how to implement the Act. Sorry, where did I just move? I've got screens here in front of me everywhere. Oops. All your regulations are kind of there as well, particularly with regard to monies and where monies need to come from to sort of fund all of this. Yep, so there's quite a bit in it, and I just sort of need you to kind of know the like sort of edited highlights of it, if that makes sense. So the first bit is to be aware that there's a piece of legislation and the name of it and the year, but sort of what the general gist of it is. So something like that, I don't need you to copy and paste that into your answer, but make that into a paragraph that just shows that you've understood yourself what it's kind of about. We've also got a piece of legislation that goes right back to 1967. So it sort of goes to show you how complicated these matters can be and that all of this legislation is relevant. The Criminal Law Act is probably quite a detailed piece of legislation and covers lots, but this is really the key bit that we're interested in. It lays out that it's an offence not to report anything that's relevant to the police. So it's not a case of basically if you're made aware, you've been made aware of something, it is your duty to report it on. Does that make kind of sense where that's kind of coming from? It's Section 5 of the Criminal Law Act, but basically it's an offence not to report something to the police when it falls under safeguarding child protection. Data Protection Act, I'm hoping that most of you have covered before in work. Can I get a thumbs up, or can I get a nod of a head, or seeing a few thumbs up? Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. So I've just done the edited highlights here. So data protection was a bit of legislation then that came in 2018, and hopefully you can see there it all falls under the Information Commissioner's Office. So you should all be able to go back to work. You should have a data protection policy. It should include GDPR, and it should talk about your ICO sort of registration number as well. So sort of the edited highlights. It was to replace the Data Protection Act of 1995. So it was out of date. It just didn't cover any technology. So that was where the sort of the GDPR came in. It was going to apply in the UK from the 25th of May, and Brexit was never going to affect GDPR. So whether we were in Europe or not in Europe, this piece of legislation was always sort of coming down the tracks at us. Basically, a lot of what it did was around these fines. So I think previously, the biggest fine in Northern Ireland had maybe been around, I think it was about the $500,000 mark. I would need to go and check my notes, but I think about $500,000. If GDPR had been in place, the fine probably would have been closer to somewhere around that 15 million mark, you know, so it would have really sort of hurt people because it's taken monies out of the system. So GDPR relevant to anybody handling personal data. And for you guys with your manager hat on, that's not just the children and their parents, that's also that staff data that you hold. You know, you hold information about staff, you know, their dates of birth, their national insurance numbers, their bank details for paying them their bank stuff. So all of that sort of personal data. And basically what they sort of said was if you have a data breach that you must notify people. So previous to that, and again, I think it was around 2012, Yahoo had a huge data breach. They reckon that sort of data thefts, criminals, they stole the data belonging to about 5 million people. Nobody was ever notified of that until it was like about 5 or 6 years later, and some whistleblower in Yahoo let people know that their email accounts and all their details had been hacked. So basically now under GDPR, you have 72 hours to let people know that their data has been hacked. And so if somebody, Shauna comes to you on a Friday night at 6 o'clock to tell you that the filing cabinet's been broken into and all the staff records have been stolen, it's not one of those ones that you can say, I'll deal with that on Monday when I'm back. The 72 hours starts at 6 o'clock in the evening. So really important if you go back and look at your policy, is there a named person that's going to deal with any breaches or take responsibility for it? And most settings do. It's generally not even the manager. It's generally like the owner or it's somebody on a committee, but just so that you're aware of everything with data protection. This is just sort of a kind of a handy reminder. Sorry, I have to keep pulling screens about here. Oops, my mouse doesn't want to work. So these were sort of the kind of the key sort of the sort of 7-bit states. So firstly, that people have to give consent to their data being shared. And most of you would be used to that with regards parents. You know, are you okay if we take a picture of the child? Are you okay if I pass your details on to social services because they want to do a questionnaire? The breach notification there we've chatted about. Right to access really means that anybody has the right to see their records. So if my children are in with Michelle, I have the right to go in and say to Michelle, I want to see my children's records, and free of charge. She has to give me any records that she holds on my child. The Data Protection Act also has a section called the right to be forgotten. I just want you to be really aware that that does not count in a childcare setting, basically because of children's rights. So I might come back into somebody's setting and say, we're leaving your setting and I want the right to be forgotten. I want my name and the child's name taken off every record that you hold about us. I just don't want to be associated with your setting at all. A child, well, majority of them will have had some sort of an accident. It'll be in your accident book that, you know, wee Johnny fell and stubbed his toe and that you put whatever on it, pseudo cream, and asked mum to take him to the doctors because it looked painful. That child has a right to basically come back and view those records up until they're over, well, 2 years plus 21 years. So really until they're 23 years of age. So their parent's rights don't kind of supersede the child's rights, if that makes sense. So that right to be forgotten just doesn't really exist in childcare, but it can exist in the like of, I don't know, if you have a credit card with Marks and Spencer's or with Next, you have the right to be forgotten. Data portability just meant that people really shouldn't be filling out the same forms over and over again, that basically that information should sort of travel with them. Privacy by design just meant, could you look at your paperwork and don't be asking questions that you don't need to ask people. So it's a bit like, I don't know, if I was signing up my child for one of your daycares, what do you need to know? You need to know my name. You maybe need to know my contact details, my address, maybe my postcode because of the funding that you get. But really, do you need to know my maiden name? Do you need to know my date of birth? You know, so think about the information that you need of parents. What do you need? Or are you just collecting that information because the form asks for it and you've always kind of done that? And a data protection officer is needed if you've got more than, I think it's 50 staff. So it's not something that affects most daycares, but it is something that's seen as good practice, that there is sort of a named person for it. And what I'm just going to let you do is just have a wee nosy at those GDPR principles there. I think it's most of the stuff that we kind of chatted about. So process lawfully, collect for a legitimate reason, it's adequate, it's limited to what's necessary, it's always accurate. And we'll come back to this when we're chatting about maybe doing observations on the children and what you record. Really important that that information's accurate. Retained only for as long as necessary. So if any of you were about in 2018 when GDPR came in, I think there was thousands upon thousands of records were in lofts and attics that were being shredded and got rid of because people were holding on to information that they didn't need to hold on to. So certainly something like an accident book needs to be kept until that child is a minimum of sort of 21 years of age. If it is safeguarding, if there's been an allegation made, those safeguarding records, the trust would talk about keeping them for sort of, I think it's around 40 to 50 years. Other sort of guidance would say you basically just keep them forever. You keep them obviously under lock and key, but you just never get rid of anything like that. Certainly things like, I don't know, your register. You know, you maybe only need to keep it a couple of years, but certainly there's records that you do need to keep a certain length of time, and that it's all processed in an appropriate manner to maintain security. And all they mean by security is that it's maybe a need to know basis, you know, so if it's parents' information, it's kept in the office and the only people that can access the office is the manager and the deputy, or it's kept in a locked filing cabinet, or if you use any of those like My Nursery Pal type apps, that they're all password protected, or if you're using a laptop that it's password protected. That's sort of our GDPR. And I sort of spent a wee bit of time on it because it comes up in about 4 units that we're going to look at over the next, 16 months left. So I just wanted to make sure we'd sort of covered it now, and that you can go away and ask those questions so that when we come to it the next time, we can kind of skip through it a wee bit quicker. Okay, so that's our GDPR. UNCRC, anybody heard of that or know what it stands for? Anybody want to unmute themselves and shout it out? These are all too shy this evening. Okay, so that's our United Nations, basically the rights of the child. So I just sort of threw up a graphic there, just sort of starting to look at some of the articles, and these are articles which children have the right to. The one that's in the middle there is probably my soapbox article. You'll hear me talking about this sort of in other classes as well. But Article 31 basically talks about a child's right to play. The children have the right to play without sort of adults kind of getting overly involved in it. And it's often talked about as being the forgotten article. So every country in the world has signed up for the UNCRC, apart from, oh my gosh, America, and I'm going to make up a country like Western Liberia or somewhere. One of the African countries hasn't signed up for it, but they're the only 2 countries in the world that have not signed up to this. For various reasons. The country in Africa still would send children to war, and America still in several of their states has the death penalty for children who would commit serious crimes. So they did not sign up to this. But countries every year, they sort of report back on where they kind of sort of stand against these articles. And basically the UK and Ireland never do overly well with these. So our safeguarding legislation also takes in this UNCRC legislation as well. So it's an international piece of law that has filtered its way down into, I suppose, UK and Ireland law, but primarily for us UK law, and has also sort of filtered itself down into councils as well. So all of you will live in a council area. Some of the councils take these articles more serious than others. So I know at the minute, if you live in the Armagh, Banbridge, Craigavon area, they have just committed there about 2 years ago. I think it's about 5 million over like a 3-4 year window to basically upgrade all their play spaces for children in that council area. You'll have seen Belfast do things where they close down streets and they have sort of play events for children. That's all based on this legislation. I don't necessarily know that they're being particularly nice, but it's a legislative requirement for them. So that's our UNCRC. I wanted to kind of just sort of throw up again a few bits just about sort of, it's more to link to a couple of documents. So I've done the same thing here as well. You know, you've got that children and young people strategy. It's a clickable link. So this basically came out in 2016, and this was the Department of Education, I suppose, sort of setting out maybe a bit of a roadmap for the next 10 years. Who knew that by 2020, 2021, we would be in the middle of a pandemic? So these things do get reviewed, but basically the general gist of the document is saying that children should be living in a society which respects their rights, that they should be healthy, that they should enjoy their learning and achieving, they should have safety and stability, they should have economic and environmental well-being, and they should be able to contribute positively to their community and society. And that strategy, it's a huge document. I think, yeah, I have a picture of it there. If you want to go away and have a bit more of a look at it, it will break each of those headings down into the things that they plan to do over the next 10 years. So again, sometimes it's just to sort of put it into context for you, because you kind of, why are we doing something? It all kind of links back to this legislation, or it links back to these strategies that are in place. Oops. Cooperating to safeguard children and young people in Northern Ireland. So again, this is from 2017. So just another policy around safeguarding children. And what they wanted to do was make sure that it covered statutory, which would be the like of your schools, the private, the independent, the community, the voluntary and the faith sectors. And it replaces any guidance that was published in 2003. So this is where I just need you to be really, really careful if you're looking at policies or procedures and you notice something that's dated 2003. It was right back in, I suppose, 2016, but newer things have come in behind it to replace it. Should have said it as well with the Data Protection Act. If I had £1 for every time one of you talks about the Data Protection Act 1998, I wouldn't be sitting here tonight. I would be away somewhere eating ice cream. So be really careful that you're always talking about the most recent legislation. And that's their document there as well. So again, just more of these sort of policies and basically setting out what they plan to do to keep children in Northern Ireland safe. We've got our revised regional core child protection policies and procedures, and these come in 2018. And I always sort of spend a bit of time here. If you last did your safeguarding training around 2018, chances are this was never covered in your safeguarding training. If you've done it since 2019, you should have touched on this a little bit, but I was definitely one of those people. I think I was back, I think it was around October or November 18. And so this wasn't talked about. Now, obviously I get my Casper email, so I was well aware of it. But if I hadn't have been aware of sort of the Casper and this new legislation kind of coming in, I nearly could have been waiting 3 years to my next safeguarding training before I heard it mentioned again. So you see now why it's important to sort of keep yourself up to date. And that particular line is something that the social worker looks for when she picks up your safeguarding, your child protection policies. Like the first line should say, this policy is based on the revised regional core child protection policies and procedures for Northern Ireland. It needs to be really explicit that everything has been updated based on what you were told in 2018. It explains the actions that must be taken when there are concerns about the welfare of a child or a young person. So it's your core procedures, any individuals who might pose a risk to children, learning and improvement to support and develop child protection, and the roles and responsibilities of the Safeguarding Board for Northern Ireland, any interagency guidance and protocols. That was all that stuff that I was chatting about. You know, how does social services talk to a doctor, talk to a school, talk to you guys in daycare or you guys in preschool? And basically that's one of the questions I'm sort of sending you away with. If you go and look at your workplace policy and procedure, does it clearly mention the revised regional core child protection policies and procedures for Northern Ireland? I can tell you at the minute, it's always 50-50 for me when I'm out and about the settings. Half of the settings will have that and the other half won't. So there's still quite a lot of settings need to get this into their policies and procedures. And that may well be the one thing that you have sort of picked up on from doing your level 5, that this is something that your workplace isn't doing. And it's dead easy then to get the policy reviewed and get it updated. And just our last one then, so Safeguarding NI, they have a strategic plan which was 2018 to 2022. So in theory, we should be seeing a new one come out next year. And again, I suppose it sort of lays out their sort of strategy of what they plan to do to support everybody. So again, I've just sort of, that's the link to it there, the web page, if you want to go and do a bit more reading about it. But basically, all you need to be aware of is that they have a plan of what they want to be doing over the next couple of years. And it's basically information for guys like yourselves as professionals, information for parents, and then information for children. But it'll sort of outline that, how they plan to go about doing that. Yep. Derbla, you'll get the slide. So after every class, you'll sort of see it's the same format. I send you the PowerPoint. I'll send you the questions. I'll send you any documents that we've chatted about. I'll sort of send you any forms. So you'll get all of that. And let me know if this is the sort of thing you'd prefer to have a week beforehand so that you can print it out and be writing on it. Like, I'm more than happy to work with whatever works for you guys the best. You know, don't ever be shy about saying. Okay, so Casper, I'm hoping we can flick through that slide that everybody has signed up for it. Big thumbs up, brilliant, brilliant. And that basically takes us through everything that you should now need to go away and answer those first two questions. So 1.1, can you outline the current legislation? So that's really working off that first slide. You've got your list of everything, and just literally just a paragraph on each one should be more than enough to answer that. 1.2 is obviously a bit more detailed, and what I'm going to do there, you'll find 1.2 ties into another question, but I'm going to basically get you to go away and look at standard 1 and standard 2 of the minimum standard. Now, you've also got to mention there the strategic plan there for the SBNI. So mention both of them, but what I'm going to get you to do there for 1.2 is basically look in detail at standard 1 and standard 2. And I'm going to actually send you, I call it an audit document. It will have all of these statements down it, and you'll basically just use it like an audit toolkit in your workplace. So if the first one says every wall should be painted pink with purple spots, you're going to look around and go, no. And your action is going to be, tell the boss we need to paint all the walls pink with purple spots. So that makes sense. I'll take you through it again in the next set of questions as well. But I just need you to audit our legislation, which is basically our minimum standards. That sort of pulls together all of that law, and it has it all in one place for you. And that's our key kind of document. And that's us now. We looked at standard 10 last month. This is us now basically touching on standard 1 and standard 2. So that's 3 of the 16 that we'll have covered by the end of this evening. Just want to take a bit of a comfort break for 5 minutes before we go into the next bit, because I know that was fairly heavy going. It was just me talking. Do you want me to throw the slides into the WhatsApp group now? I'll maybe do that now so that you have it. Yeah, so there's a couple of you have came through saying you would like to have it before. Yep, that's no problem. I can start doing that. No bother at all. And if you want to have them printed out, just watch out that you're not printing out one slide per page, because you could end up with like a 50-page document. There's a way to manipulate it, and you can have like 3 slides on a page or 6 slides on a page. So just if you're printing it out at home or you're printing it out at work, but I'll put in some instructions of how to do that as well. Perfect. So look here, take a break, and I'll see you in sort of 5 minutes. Take a bit of a comfort break. Okay, so the second bit then, that second learning outcome, we need to look at how you review policies and procedures.
Watch.
2.1, we're going to look at explore why public inquiries and case management reviews are required. And that's that sort of Casper stuff, that email that I've got used to sign up for. We're going to review the effectiveness and the current secure setting safeguarding policies procedures. So that 2.2 ties into your 1.2. Sorry, oops. I think somebody has popped into the waiting room. Hang on a wee sec, sorry. Yeah, there they are. Okay. 2.3, we need to look at why it's important to sort of have a child-centered approach to safeguarding. And 2.4 is looking us to develop a collaborative process with organisations and individuals for reviewing our safeguarding policies and procedures. So I suppose there we're thinking about, you know, using the childcare partnership for training. We're maybe thinking about who does your access NI checks for you. So if you're within a preschool, you know, is that maybe done by the Department of Education? If you're in a community group, are you using a community organisation? Or if you're a private daycare, you maybe set up yourself to do your own access NI. So again, just so you get your head around that once you have your level 5 and you are starting to interview staff and employ people, where do you go to get them sort of access NI checked? Who are you having to work in partnership with to get all that information that you need? Okay, so these case management reviews, so I just sort of took this from the Safeguarding Board NI, and these are basically case management reviews really happen where a child dies suddenly when it's unexplained. So if you've been getting the Casper emails, you should sort of see as you start to scroll down that email, you can look to see where there's been case management reviews. And I suppose it's really people looking at what went wrong and how can we make sure that that just never happens in the future. It's suppose it's to make sure that there's transparency and that difficult questions are asked, and I suppose looking to see could it have been avoided, and what possibly could have been done differently. And the whole idea is that the rest of us, that we learn by what has maybe gone on somewhere else. So again, with the Casper email, if you're scrolling down it, you'll maybe see case management reviews, and it might be to do with the death of a child in a hospital. I personally don't tend to go there and looking at those things. It's not the nicest topic to be looking at, you know, anyway. I tend to stick to those case management reviews, which are around daycare or preschool or happened in a school, something that I feel maybe my practice could learn from. And I know one of the ones that I was sort of very acutely aware of years ago was a child died via, it was strangulation on an outdoor piece of play equipment. And another child had just tied a piece of rope along the top of the slide. The child sat and their neck got caught in the, so it's obviously horrific. But I think what was really interesting was with the case management review at that stage, I guess most settings wouldn't even have had a mobile phone policy. And basically, this review really, I suppose, found out that the staff member that was on duty outside was also looking at their phone. So there's that element of understanding why we have policies the way we have them. It's why you don't have your phone, and we all can do it. Like I could literally start reading something now and I would nearly forget all the rest of yous were there if I was on BBC News website and reading a story that interested me. What was also really interesting was it really did talk about how quickly a child is asphyxiate the right word, when it's strangulation. And it happens in seconds. So what the case management review also said, even if the staff member hadn't have been on their phone and had seen it, they would never have got to the child in time. But I imagine that staff member will they'll obviously have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But it does then get you thinking about, not necessarily to read it in a gory way or for it to upset anybody. It's more about, well, could that happen in our setting? So straight away, you'd like to be thinking, well, no, because nobody has their mobile phone on them, or no, because we would always have two staff outside, and no, we would have done a risk assessment and we would have caught on to the rope being there. Does that kind of make sense? It's not about anything to beat anybody with a big stick. It's just about really looking with an honest, fresh pair of eyes. Potentially, could that happen in our place? And then this is where it sort of ties into, I suppose, other aspects of your job role. And we touched on it a little bit when we were looking at staff supervisions, you know, that importance of bringing up child protection and bringing safeguarding up at every supervision. So that might be something, you know, if that happened now, that's something you can share at a staff meeting, but it's also something then you can bring up in a supervision, just to make sure that staff member has that understanding on a one-to-one basis with you. Remember we chatted about if, you know, somebody mentions something you don't know and everybody else is nodding their head, you nod your head too. This is where all this becomes important. And you've then sort of got that evidence that you spoke to me as a staff member and you were doubly sure that I fully understood it. So more recent ones have been grapes. You know, that's why we now cut grapes long ways and 4 ways. Children died from choking on grapes. There was a serious case management review and the guidance was that we now slice our grapes. You know, that's where all of this comes from. Blind cords would have been another big one, probably about 15, 16, 17 years ago. We had 2 cases here in Northern Ireland, really out, they were about a week apart. 2 children both died. They got tangled up in the, looking at them here, the vertical blind cords. And at that time, you know, if I'm going back 17 years, somebody cleverer than me can do the maths. What was that, about 2003, 2004? Think of some of that legislation we have looked at tonight. That wasn't in place. So those methods of getting information out to people, and I can remember being in a setting at the time, it was in the Sunday papers, and it was one of the first things we did when we went in on the Monday. We cut our vertical blind cords. We just cut them so that there was no way anybody, if they fell into it, a memo did come out from social services, but I think if my memory serves me right, it came out about 7 months later. That's how long it took for that kind of information to cascade down now. Whereas things like the grapes, nearly, you know, if that happens on a Monday, you nearly have a message about it by the Tuesday. Does that make sense? Things happen quicker now. And I suppose it's about recognizing maybe where settings are at. And, you know, we're going to touch on a few high profile cases here, but it's sometimes you wonder why you do things in work. And generally it always tracks back, particularly anything to do with this. It's been a serious case review. Something has happened somewhere, and this has now been put in place so that it never happens to another family again. So definitely, if you kind of be in a good frame of mind when you do it, but, you know, sort of Google NSPCC, Northern Ireland, serious case reviews or case management reviews, it will bring up an awful lot, but definitely make sure you're in a good place to start looking at anything like that. But it is about us just learning. It's not about, you know, pointing the finger at people. It's about learning from mistakes and making sure that it doesn't happen again. Sorry, being slow. So anybody, if I've sort of mentioned this a couple of times and I said we would come to it, if I sort of talk about high profile cases to do with child protection or safeguarding, you know, and can you give me a case that you can think of even in the last sort of up to 20-25 years ago?
Me, yeah.
Yep.
I can't think.
No problem. We'll see if anybody else can help you. Lynn, what about you? Any high profile cases where a child has died?
I actually can't think now. I'm trying to think, but
Don't worry.
I bet if you named one.
Yeah, no, and I think when you see them, you'll go, oh yeah. Serena, you're nodding your head there. Just finished your level 3 not that long ago. You must remember one of them.
Yeah, well, actually, we talked about loads. Like, we actually spent nearly a full day. There was the Jessica and Holly one.
Yeah.
There was one actually just dropped on Netflix, the Hernandez one.
All right.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Locked in the cupboard that whole time.
Yep.
So I really
No,
it scares me, but I always get interested in stuff and I need to know.
Yeah.
I always have young children.
Yeah, look, so as soon as you mentioned Jessica and Holly there, I could see people nodding their heads.
Yeah.
And I think this is where I just kind of want you to sort of tie things together with regards a high profile case and what that maybe means to us now today. Sorry, I just sort of see things coming. Baby P was another one. Brilliant, Sarah. Yep, Baby P's a big one. So like I'm going to share my list with you. So hang on. So I had things like Victoria Climby, Baby P, Daniel Pelka, Vanessa George and Ian Huntley. And again, if you were doing your level 3, we would look at these in a lot more detail. At level 5, I don't need you to know these in any great detail. I just sort of want to blow the cobwebs away and sort of remind you of probably things that you've looked at before. So Victoria Climby, we probably are going back about 20 years. She was a little girl that had been sent over, I can't remember what African country it was from, to live with her aunt and her aunt's boyfriend. And Victoria died. She was severely underweight, malnourished. She had broken ribs. She had bruises. She had obviously went through a really horrific time. And really the main document that came from that, and that's why I put up the little sort of graphic there, was a document called Every Child Matters. And that forms the basis of all of our safeguarding stuff that we have within the United Kingdom. So when the serious case review happened around Victoria Climby, it was really just that lack of communication, because certainly the police were aware. There was several doctors, hospitals were aware. Her social worker was aware. School was aware, but nobody was talking to each other. So there wasn't that sort of joined up communication that hopefully goes on now. And I want to chat a wee bit about that as well. Baby P then happened. I think it's Baby P's now around 10 years ago. And then we then learned that Baby P was Peter. And to me, the scandalous thing with Baby P was it was really just a repeat of Victoria Climby, basically 10 years later, it was as if we had learnt nothing. And it was a very similar case. Mum had people living with her that social services kind of hadn't checked out. One they weren't overly aware of, but yet the child was on the sort of at-risk register. Mum spread chocolate over the child's face to cover bruises when the social worker called. He was known to a couple of the local hospitals. I think when he actually died, he had a broken spine. It was a very sort of serious injury, and it actually had been missed by a doctor. So again, it's back to this, every child matters, that importance of, and obviously, I suppose you can play devil's advocate from a social services point of view, and they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't, you know. So if they take a child away from a family, they're the worst in the world. If they leave a child with a family, they're the worst in the world. It's a really fine line, and it's a very difficult line. It's certainly not a job that I think I could do. Anybody remember Daniel Pelka? No, Daniel Pelka was the little boy that died. His mum had went into school and told the teacher that he had a condition called Prader-Willi syndrome. And for any of you that haven't heard of PWS, it's a genetic condition that basically the child will eat and eat and eat. So you'll see a lot of overweight children have PWS. It's a medical condition. So if there was a bin in the corner of the room with food, they would go scavenging in the bin for the food. Kitchen cupboards have to be locked. They don't have that. They don't know that they've eaten and that they're full up. So Mum explained that this was the condition that he had to the teacher, and the teacher then very controlled Daniel's diet. He got scolded when he tried to steal another child's sandwich. He was trying to scavenge food from the bin. He got told off. It turned out that Daniel did not have this illness. He didn't, and he basically wasted away. Mum, there was also a daughter, and the daughter was very healthy. I don't know whether this was a son that wasn't wanted or what the story was, but so Danielle Pelka should sort of get us all thinking about when a parent tells us that a child has severe allergies, or we kind of want medical proof. You know, if you're asking us to cut out dairy, wheat, gluten, and, you know, mushrooms and something else out of their diet, we kind of want medical proof of that. We've got Vanessa George. So Vanessa George is the reason why we all now have mobile phone policies. And this was probably a case that kind of sort of scandalized people, because up until then, we sort of seen anybody that interfered with a child as being male. And it was quite alien that this could be a female. And not only a female, but somebody who worked in childcare, and actually somebody who was the manager of a daycare setting. But she was taking videos of children. To this day, they really don't know what children, and they don't know 100% exactly what went on. But she was certainly sharing videos with her boyfriend of the time, and the videos were being shared amongst people. And that would have been in a time when changing facilities were always in a separate room. I know certainly my early days of daycare, you went to a separate room to change the baby's nappy. You know, nobody would have thought of wedging open a door and holding up the door and checking what you were kind of doing. That it just wasn't in anybody's just naivety, I suppose. Whereas now, you know, if you are in a baby room, the changing station is in the corner of the room. If you're in a preschool, you have a system whereby doors get wedged open, and where one staff member stands and where the other one stands, so that everybody can see each other. And again, mobile phones should not be about your person at all. So again, that's the reason we have a mobile phone policy. And Ian Huntley then was the Holly and Jessica case. So Ian Huntley was the caretaker of the school, and it was at a time when vetting only happened in the area that you were applying for the job for, and he was new into the area, so therefore there were no records for him in that area. But if the way vetting is done now, was checked back to all his known addresses, known jobs, places where he had lived, it certainly would have, he had never been convicted of anything, but it would have thrown up enough questions that he would never have been employed in a school. And that's why we're vetted. It's that whole bit about trying to do as much as reasonably possible. It's a system that's not full safe, because ultimately I might be an abuser of children and I haven't been caught yet. Therefore, my access NI will come back clear. But it's the best that we kind of have. So I just sort of wanted to do sort of a quick whistle stop tour of them, and I can see a few of you have put ones in chat as well, and they all kind of feed into this notion of then a serious case review and what do we learn from it. And generally we learn and things change within our setting. We do things differently based on what we become aware of. So that's our high profile cases. You probably, if you did do your level 3, you've touched on them at some point, and hopefully that has sort of blew the cobwebs away, and you're remembering those cases again. Oops. Okay, so I told you we were going to look at the minimum standards, and apologies, this is sort of a very bad sort of copy of it, but we chatted about it at the beginning. So this will cover that question 1.2 and 2.2. So basically what I'm going to do, you'll get a document that has standard 1 and standard 2 on it. And it will basically have all of the indicators sort of listed down one side. And there's an opportunity for you to tick off when you have checked these, or to put in a bit of an action. So I've just put in the first few there. So is there a written policy and code of practice on safeguarding based on the Regional Child Protection Policy and Procedure? That's not me making this up. That is the line from the minimum standards. So I just want you to go and read your policy with a fresh pair of eyes, and is that statement on it? Your safeguarding sort of child protection policies are those policies that should be reviewed yearly. So you should know by picking up a policy when was the last date that it was reviewed. So for example, in work, myself and a colleague, Karen, we just over the sort of the summer there, we've worked our way through all of our policies. Some were long overdue because of COVID. So they all have a date on them. It'll probably be June or July or August. I know I'm now being audited in March, and today I did a happy dance because they will all, when somebody comes out to me in March 22, I'm covered because that takes me back to March 21. So all mine are up to date for my audit early next year, but it should be really clear on the policy. When was it last reviewed? All staff should have received safeguarding training within the last 3 years. And if we had been doing this 2 years ago, I just don't think I ever see it not being ticked. I think this is one, but you may discover that there is staff or need their safeguarding training, and because of COVID, it hasn't been able to happen. Just because of there being no training for a while, and then things kind of go into Zoom. I think everywhere has kind of caught up now, but I know there was a big backlog with the like of safeguarding, food hygiene, pediatric first aid. So all staff have received recognised safeguarding training. And this is not you asking your boss and them going, yep, Natasha, everybody's had it. Is there a document that you can look at? Is there a certificate you can check? Imagine you're going in as a social worker. Where is this evidence for you to basically sign off that indicator? Parents are informed at enrolment about safeguarding and child protection procedures. Normally you just get them to sign and date their life away with all of the policies, but have you got that for every parent? Is there a written policy and procedure for intimate and personal care? Is this reviewed yearly? And how are parents informed of this? It's generally through induction. And intimate and personal care probably becomes more challenging to guys like you, Darren, where you're in a preschool. Toileting policies are nearly dead easy. You know, this is how we do nappies and this is what we do. But certainly when the children, you know, are of an age where they can undress and dress themselves, it becomes a slightly different policy. And particularly, I think it can be a big shock to parents when they hear that you're not getting into clean bums, you know, once they're at sort of that preschool. And again, any of you guys that are in an after school, particularly around that sort of still P1 age, parents can still be quite shocked that you're not basically in fully supervising their child. And basically you have a whole list of indicators for standard 1 and standard 2. And I just want you to sort of put your social worker hat on, and where is all this evidence in your setting? And this is really good prep. It's getting you sort of prepared for the day that you have to deal with the social services inspection. You know where all of this information is, and we'll just take it standard by standard. So you'll get a document with all of those outlined as well. I did just stick on something for older children. It's the NSPCC Pants campaign. So if you're sitting there in a daycare, you may not have come across the Pants campaign. It tends to be more preschoolers and after schools and above. But it is it's a really nice campaign. There's really great resources for you guys as staff. There's great resources for the children. Great resources for parents as well. So again, just some of those key messages with children, you know, your privates are your private parts, not sometimes explain about when you wear a swimming costume, that their body belongs to you. So that's all that stuff about, you know, parents particularly not forcing them to sort of kiss an auntie or a granny that the child doesn't want to, because we're trying to get a message across that, you know, no means no, and it's their body, and if they don't want to kiss somebody, they don't have to. Again, that whole conversation about secrets, nobody should be getting them to keep a secret that upsets them. So generally, this is always a fun one around preschool and P1, because secrets are something always then exciting, and it can be about a birthday present, and children will go through a window where they cannot keep any secret. But it's about them understanding good secrets and bad secrets, and that they can speak up. There's been really fantastic research done by NSPCC, and children that are getting help from being abused, they generally told at least 2 other adults before somebody did something about it. You do not want to be that adult that a child told something to and you did nothing about it, or you just didn't understand what they were getting at. And again, I think that's really important that we sort of promote that message of children knowing their body parts. You know, because, you know, sometimes children will say, you know, mummy touched my remote, and remote is not you, that just doesn't mean anything to you, but remote is a word that they're using for a private body part. You know, there's been loads of examples, so it's really important that children can articulate what their body parts are called, and those words as well. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention, just in case you'd never been aware of the Pants campaign. This was something I was writing a workshop a couple of years ago, and I was sort of going back to basics, and I went to the NSPCC website, and all I've done here with you guys is do a cut and paste. I think up until then, I always thought about abuse as sort of being that, probably those sort of the bottom two there, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and I suppose neglect. And I had started to become aware of emotional abuse. So if you had asked me for a definition of what abuse is, I probably would have listed those 4. But I think what you can see as this has developed over the years, that abuse umbrella covers quite a lot of things. You know, so bullying and cyberbullying's there, child sexual exploitation, child trafficking, your FGM. Domestic abuse now falls under child abuse, grooming of children, non-recent abuse, online abuse. So can you sort of see how that definition has grown and grown? And I think it's just still one of those things that I keep coming back to, because I think my head still just tunes into those 4 and doesn't necessarily think about the other things. I am certainly involved with a preschool, and we had a suspected case of FGM. So for those of you that aren't aware, FGM can mean different things in different countries to different religions, but we had a 4-year-old girl that we were very concerned about. And I think that's what kind of shocked me when that was something that we were looking at in Northern Ireland. Up until then, FGM was something that maybe was something going on in England. And it wasn't until I was dealing with it here and realizing sort of the impact. I think I shared a story with you there about sort of domestic abuse and more of this joined up thinking that if the police are called out to a house and that there's children involved, that they will notify the child's school so that somebody can be keeping an eye on the child. And I totally appreciate there's pros and cons to that, and it might stop somebody picking up the phone to reach for help. But I think in those cases where it's a neighbour has phoned the police, It's about making sure that that support is there for that child because of maybe what they have observed that evening. So again, you can sort of see how we're moving on, and it is about protecting children in whatever way that we can. So I have some slides here, and these are not necessarily for you guys, so I'm not going to spend any time reading them out or talking about them. I'll chat to you about it when we're looking at the questions, but certainly there is an element that they want you to sort of show that you have passed on knowledge to staff. So what I've done here is just give you loads of slides. So you may want to use these slides if you're creating a presentation or just to make some little notes for yourself. So again, I've a slide there just about what is child abuse. I've talked through some types of abuse. It's not everything that's on that NSPCC list. And this is training material that comes from our level 3 CCLD qualification. So it's, if any of your guys are going through their level 3, they will be going through this. But I just sort of thought it'd be useful if you were a manager of a setting, what you might want to do each month is take a different type of abuse and just have a conversation with staff, not to upset anybody, not to upset anybody, but just to make people aware of it. Particularly where if you're getting a staff member like me that maybe hasn't made that connection between domestic abuse and how that affects a child. So again, you might just want to take one a month. What I've kind of got here is just a whole host of slides, so what is domestic abuse, what all is kind of what falls under that umbrella, how does that affect children? We talk about teenagers who are experiencing domestic abuse, what some of the indicators can be, what the behaviours can be in a child, because we need to be thinking about how will that play out with a child. So, so that they're thinking when they see a child being aggressive, are they just being aggressive because somebody stole their favourite toy? Or is there potentially other things to be now watching out for? Is there something else maybe going on? It's not always about just dismissing it. That's just wee Johnny fighting because wee Johnny fights. Is there maybe more behind it? So there's bits there about how it affects children. It goes through sexual abuse. It goes through, indicators, behaviours. It goes through neglect, indicators, behaviours, how it affects the children, how it affects their brain development. There's a bit on physical abuse, all of the physical abuse indicators. So again, all things that people will have done in their safeguarding training, but just sort of taking you through it so that you could pull together a wee bit of a presentation yourself. Does that seem okay? And you get me not going through it because I don't need you to talk about that in any of your answers, any of your questions, but I need to be seeing that you're sharing that information with your staff. So I let you decide what way you kind of want to do it best. So again, it's maybe even about, printing that one slide out as a bit of a poster to have it up in a staff room. What is unusual behavior? Would you have thought about it as eating disorders? Would you have thought about it as, an older child getting involved in alcohol or getting involved in drugs? So again, it's just to start those conversations, because for so many of you, it won't be something that you have ever had to deal with. Again, just a slide. This tends to be the one thing that comes up time and time again with sort of social services when they're out chatting to staff not knowing what they would do if a child, reports anything to them. So again, maybe that sort of 10 sort of step sort of approach might be something that makes it easier for people to have in their head. Talk them away from other children, listen, believe what they tell you, reassure them that you're taking it seriously. Sorry, that should be write down exactly what happened. Write down who was there. You promise that you can't keep a secret. Don't be making promises to them, because you do need to pass it on to your designated safeguarding officer. So again, making sure that your staff always know what they would do if they were faced with that situation. I worked with a manager before, and she still cries when she talks about the case that fell apart in court because they hadn't followed their procedures in daycare. It happened probably about 16 years ago, and she still cries about it because the perpetrator got to walk away from court that day. all because they didn't follow their procedures in daycare. So you really can't stress to people enough how important it is that they do everything by the book, because it has such knock-on effects to other things. But the case fell apart in court, all because of what daycare didn't do. So that is our sort of second learning outcome then, supporting this review of policies and procedures. And you can see how that would happen if you started to do the audit. You might pick up on something that's not mentioned or something that you're not doing. So 2.1, we want to explore why public inquiries and case management reviews are required. So we've chatted about that. They're required because a child has died, there's strange circumstances, and that importance of sharing our findings. So we talked about, you know, where our mobile phone policy came from, or access ANI checks. They all come from those high profile cases. 2.2, you're going to do by doing your audit. And hopefully what should sort of come out of all of that, I suppose, is that little bit of 2.3, you know, evaluate the impact of a child-centered approach to safeguarding on your policies and procedures. You know, so you're really looking there about why it's important that it is all about the child. It's not about protecting a staff member or protecting a parent. It's about following those policies and procedures that are written in that legislation that we looked at in 1.1, so that child is truly protected when they're in your care. You know, you can even come right down to things like why it's really important that there's always 2 staff on duty in a room. It's not about that nobody trusts you or that you're not capable of looking after, you know, 6 children for 15 or 20 minutes. It's about making sure that you've kept yourself right, but ultimately kept those children right as well. And 2.4 says develop a collaborative process with organizations and individuals for reviewing your policies, procedures. I think if I seen there just a bit of a list about who all you have that you can speak to. So the like of your Link social worker, maybe an early years advisor, you've got you're signed up for your Casper, NSPCC, whoever you work with to do your Access ANI. Some of you maybe are even involved with the Trust for your Child Protection and Safeguarding training, just depending on where you're located. It's just looking to show that you know who all that you can kind of reach out to. Tonight we learned about the Safeguarding Board for Northern Ireland as well. You know, so you've got all of those sort of, and NSPCC, another organisation that you can be in contact with if you've got a query or a question about something. Does that seem okay? Happy enough? We'll keep larging on here because I think there's going to be a couple of videos coming up, so we'll get them out of the way and then we'll take another bit of a comfort break. So the third learning outcome we need to look at tonight is be able to lead practice in supporting our children's well-being and resilience. So we need to look at sort of current research on well-being and resilience. And resilience is a word up until the pandemic. I don't know if it was overly being used. You probably have half came across it. But I think really in the last sort of 9 months, resilience has been kind of everywhere to do with children and their resilience and going back to school and getting back to normal. So we'll look at all of that and we'll get you to look at how that works in your own work setting. How do you do that? And then 3.3 and 3.4, this is the bit I was chatting to you about in the previous section. So 3.3 wants you to create some resources, support the understanding and importance of well-being and resilience in the context of safeguarding. And 3.4, can you make sure that you're mentoring and supporting other staff to develop the skills to safeguard children? And you'll have that evidence through your staff supervisions if you're asking about who the designated officer is. And maybe now you can look at organising some training for staff, and that's just your evidence about how you're supporting them. We'll kind of keep coming back to 3.3 and 3.4, but I just sort of want to do this last session about sort of that importance of well-being and resilience and what it kind of is, and just get you thinking about it a little bit. So the word resilience, if I throw you into the breakout rooms, can you have a wee bit of a chat in groups? I'll put you into different groups this time so that you are having a bit of a conversation with somebody else. Have a chat about how you found tonight so far, how you found the course so far. And I want you thinking about, what does the word resilience even mean? How would you start to describe it to somebody? So Give me 2 seconds. Swear you'd think I think it's because I only used Zoom once this month.
Resilience.
Okay, recreate. So I'm throwing you all into different rooms here.
Of resilience.
And about resilience. Yep. What does resilience mean? But have a chat with each other as well and say hello. Hopefully it's to different people this time. That should be everybody getting their invite now. Hi, Lynn. Is your invite working okay? Honor. You three guys are out first. Tell me what resilience means.
Just trying to get back into the swing of something after you've had like a tragic thing or something major change in your life.
Yeah, it's nearly that like bounce back ability about how
Yeah.
to kind of deal with things. Yeah. The next group that kind of come out there, what would you sort of add to that? What does resilience mean to you guys?
We were in the same group.
Oh, were you? So you were on the same, just took us a while to come out. Oops. Just waiting to everything pops out here, just takes a wee while. I think that's everybody. Yeah, everybody has popped out. Okay. So I was sort of picking on the first group that came out. So they were sort of chatting about that ability to be able to sort of maybe deal with things or when things haven't went well. And hopefully that's sort of a similar conversation that you were all starting to have about what's meant by this word resilience. So resilience, the ability to bounce back from stress, adversity, failure, challenges, or even trauma. It's not something that children either have or don't have. It's a skill that children develop as they grow. Resilient children are more likely to take healthy risks because they don't fear falling short of expectations. This is probably a fairly good sort of way of explaining resilience, that sort of bounce back ability. What I sort of want to sort of touch on a little bit here, and we probably come back to this as well, is this notion of ACEs. So has anybody been on their ACE training, adverse childhood experiences, or is this your first time hearing about it? A bit of a mixture there. Yeah, so basically ACEs, here I'll take this actually off so we're not kind of reading it first. ACEs was research that went on in America. Basically there was two doctors were working on sort of opposite coasts of America, and what they were sort of looking at with their patients were why were some patients sort of dying routinely, sort of maybe 10 to 15, 20 years earlier than others when they were of a same age or were born sort of in the same era. And they started to look about this notion of adverse childhood experiences, and they came up with a list of 10 of them, and we'll sort of look at it. But it was basically that, you know, maybe based on your diet or based on some sort of trauma that might have happened to you as a child could actually affect your lifespan and how long you were actually going to live for. So I have a wee bit of a blurb here just about it. Yeah, 1998 in the US of A. And basically there's these sort of 10 events that they're sort of referring to as being ACE events. And we'll look at each one. I suppose really there's been sort of talk there in the last sort of 18 months that COVID, you know, may well be classed as an ACE as well. Just what a long-term effect is that going to have on our children? And it's why this notion of resilience is just being chatted about so much. So there's some really good ACE training out there. I'm going to show you a I'll give you a link for an online course that's totally free of charge. But I know the Childcare Partnership would run ACE training as well. And I haven't been to the Childcare Partnership one, but I always hear really, really good stories about it. So what I want to do is show you a video here, but I bet you, would I just fix the sound side just so that everybody can hear it, okay? Yeah, so let me know if you can't hear the sound here. Everybody hearing that okay?
My parents don't understand. All the drinking and fighting means I'm scared. I'd like a cuddle, perhaps a bedtime story, but mostly I'd like them to stop shouting at me. And sometimes they hit me. Feeling scared every
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't realise me looking at chat messages. You just couldn't hear it.
day and not feeling loved or wanted will change me for the rest of my life. Later, I'll have problems at school, problems with alcohol, and I'll get in trouble with the police. What's happening to me right now means I'm more likely to have serious health problems in middle age and die sooner than I should. Doctors say my life is full of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. But in my world, this means I see my dad hitting my mum. Dad's got a drinking problem, and mum's always crying, even with the tablets. I am always being shouted at and hit. After the booze and fags, there's not a lot of money for toys or clothes, or even food. I'm getting used to being scared all the time. Now I'm just angry. Doctors say things are changing inside me. My brain isn't learning how to control my feelings properly. My body can't relax like those kids who don't have ACEs, so my body won't be able to repair itself properly when I get older, making it more likely I'll get cancer or heart disease as an adult. It hurts when my parents hit me, but the real damage is hidden, and that damage will be with me for life.
I drink and smoke. They say I'm out of control, but I'm not. It's just my way of coping with my ACEs. I've been in plenty of fights, but what's wrong with that? Kids' punches don't hurt half as much as when my dad hits me. I beat up a kid last week at school because he looked at me weird. Who cares? I ended up with more time out of school. Learning's not for me anyway, and the teachers don't care any more than my parents. I don't like the way anyone looks at me except my girl. She's 16 and pregnant, just like my mum was with me.
So this is where I've ended up. I've got diabetes and cancer's probably on the way. I know these kill you, but I couldn't do without them. I've never had a proper job and I've spent time inside. I hate my kids. I hate their mum too, until she left, so my kids have grown up with ACEs. And now my daughter had her first kid. She's 16. The course of my life was set in the wrong direction a long time ago. I know where I'm heading, and sadly I know where my kids are heading too. This doesn't have to happen. A little help in childhood makes a big difference to where life takes you. When I was a baby, the nurses noticed that my mum wasn't coping and helped her and explained how important my childhood is to the rest of my life. So, with a bit of help, she coped. The police came round after next door complained about the noise from mum and dad fighting. They asked how I was feeling. I told them I was scared all the time. Mum and dad got help. The shouting got better and the hitting stopped. I even got some bedtime stories. I still had problems at school, but the teacher asked me about what was happening at home. I got help controlling my feelings. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. I'm now married with 2 children, and I've got a job. most of the time. I haven't repeated the same problems with my kids. We got help when being a parent got too much. Our children are ACE-free, and that means their kids stand a good chance of growing up ACE-free as well. Almost half the people in England and Wales experienced one ACE as a child, and 1 in 10 of us suffered 4 or more ACEs. If we stop ACEs, millions of children would not become smokers or binge drinkers, and levels of violence in adults would be cut in half. Fewer ACEs in childhood also means fewer adults developing diseases like cancer, heart disease and diabetes in middle age. We all need to be ACE aware. Are you? Doctors, police, nurses, teachers, firefighters and most importantly parents. The more you know about ACEs, the more you can help stop children growing up with ACEs in their lives. And for those of you who have already suffered ACEs, the more you know, the more you can help yourself and others who have suffered ACEs cope.
Hopefully that video was useful in sort of explaining a wee bit about ACEs. And I suppose the focus of tonight is just to make everybody ACE aware. I'm certainly not qualified to take anybody through it's the shouting bit in that video. But if you wanted to read more information on it, if you just Google it, you can Google for the ACEs quiz and you can generally do it online. I would sort of always sort of say a bit like us doing the safeguarding unit, you know, it might be quite upsetting to think about some things that you went through as a child. So make sure that you've got that support in place. But basically the questions are based on the issues that are there. And I'm not going to get us to do a group discussion tonight, but it certainly might be something that you might want to do if you're going to be doing some training with your staff and you wanted to be looking at the area of resilience or the whole area of ACEs. And really what you can be looking at there is, excuse me, how can any of these things in childhood affect basically the brain, the body, or a child's behavior? You know, so whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, that physical neglect, emotional neglect, seeing your mother treated violently. And, you know, I've always been sort of queried on this. It doesn't talk about your father being treated violently. It is your mother being treated violently. Household substance abuse, household mental illness, parental separation or divorce, or a household member of your family being in prison. All of that will affect a child. And if you watch any of the sort of longer videos around it, really interesting, you sort of see groups of social workers talking about it, that it's an exercise that they would do as a staff team. And we certainly did it as a childcare team several years ago. And round our sort of table, we had everything from somebody having an ACE score of 0 right through to somebody having an ACE score of 7. So it was just something that we were all comfortable doing and sharing with each other. But it's just to kind of sort of get you thinking about it's not necessarily because somebody has an ACE score of 7 that they're going to end up in prison themselves and doing drugs. It's about then that impact that adults have. And that's what everybody chatted about when we were a staff team, that importance of adults in your life who were there to sort of support you and basically make home life that it wasn't the be all and end all, that you could see another way and help develop that sort of resilience within you. So back to kind of that definition of the beginning, you know, how do you deal with life's knocks? And you deal with it by other people's support and other people sort of showing you the way. So this was the course I was chatting about, guys. It's via the Home Office, and it's totally free of charge. And that link there is there at the bottom, acesonlinelearning.com. It takes seconds to set it up. They talk about there, it takes about 50 minutes to work through. Generally, I always find people work through it in about 30 minutes. It will take you through about ACEs, about what they mean, about those sort of 10 questions and the 10 areas. And when you complete it at the end, you can input your name and print out a certificate to say that you've done the training. So it may be something that you want to go away and do to give you a bit more information, or it may be something that you want to get your staff to do. And this would be how you would be supporting them, the resources to support resilience and understand sort of safeguarding and all of that as well. This is another great website, and I always feel as if I should be on commission for them because I rave about them all the time. Irish Attachment in Action, really well worth a follow if you're on sort of Facebook or Twitter, that sort of on all of those sort of social medias. And they run a really excellent conference. Well, they pre-pandemic, and it was held always somewhere in the island of Ireland. So last year's was supposed to have been Belfast. Obviously, it's been cancelled and it didn't happen this year. So I'm fingers crossed that it's opening in Belfast next year. I attended the one previous to that and was humble enough money to attend for the day. I think maybe about £20. You got an invite to an event that happened the evening before and then to the day conference the next day. It was just one of the most interesting days that I spent about understanding about how things that can happen to a child can affect them. The guest speakers, bar one, were all absolutely fantastic. And I just learned so many things, and I would still refer to it nearly on a weekly basis. It was just so interesting. Their website's really interesting. Their social media feed is really interesting. And it's an all Ireland. So they work north and south. So the conference has been, I think it's been in Cork, it's been in Omagh, it's maybe been in Dublin, and it was due to been in Belfast, but definitely well worth checking out, and just maybe for your own sort of CPD and what else is kind of out there. But definitely they're well worth a bit of a follow-up, so they are. I have a couple of slides here. I would cover this in a course I do with the Childcare Partnership. So we would talk about these essential building blocks of resilience. And again, it's not necessarily me trying to teach you guys anything. I'm not trying to teach you how to suck eggs, but it might just be a useful couple of slides to sort of to share with staff and to get them thinking just about what their role is in it. You know, the first one talks there about competence, you know, noticing when a young person is doing something right and giving them those opportunities to develop important skills so they feel competent. And they're probably, as I read that out there, you're kind of saying to yourself, yeah, I would do all that. You know, we let them put their own coats on and butter their own bread, and we always try and catch them doing things good. It's really just about your staff making that connection about why that is so important to develop those skills in a child, because you're helping to develop their resilience. You know, we want to give them confidence. We want them to make connections with us, you know, with other staff in other rooms and with their local community. We want them to you know, be able to talk with another child or talk with another adult. That character, you know, we want to give them their morals. We want them to understand the difference between right and wrong. And that's a lot of those things that we do about our helping hands. You know, we try and break it into a really easy message for a preschooler or a preschooler to understand that just because you've got a hand doesn't mean to say you slap your best friend. You know, we're helping them sort of navigate all of that. Contribution, you know, so that they feel that they're sort of contributing to things. So whether that's collecting food at, you know, sort of harvest festivals, or whether they're making sort of donations of a Christmas gift or a Christmas card to an old person, you know, something where they know that they're helping somebody else. I know in my child's school, they do a thing, it's not NSPCC, what's Dr. Bernardo's, and they do a sort of thing, and it's all about resilience, and it's all about, oh geez, they'll have like weeks where you do like sort of secret nice things for somebody. Or you you know, you buy somebody a bar of chocolate and you hide it somewhere so that they find it, and with a wee note attached, or about writing out what are the 3 things that you like about somebody, so that they kind of are hearing what other people think about them and hearing those positive things. Although I must admit, we had a laugh when my youngest child came home with her list and one of her friends had told her about how organized she was. She is the most scatterbrained, unorganized person you will ever meet in your puff. But this is how our friend sees her, as being very organized, and she thought this was great. We want to give them coping strategies. So that can be a lot of those sort of mindfulness things that you're maybe doing about, where you're getting them to think about their breathing or listen to their breathing, or that importance of going outside and running about. That can be people's coping mechanism, getting out in the fresh air. And again, that control, that importance of sort of making choices, and that they are in control of things. So it's not about saying to a 3-year-old, would you like an apple for break time, or would you like a Kit Kat? Because if I was a 3-year-old, I think I'd be going for the Kit Kat. But, you're maybe offering them the choice between an apple or an orange. You're still giving them healthy things, but they get to choose. Any of you with toddlers will know you don't tell them what to wear in the morning. You give them a choice. Do they want to wear their blue trousers or their black trousers? And they'll be happy to choose that. But if you let them pick, they'll go out dressed as Batman with a tutu on, and you're maybe going to a funeral. Does that make sense? So it's all about kind of giving them those choices and letting the children feel that they're in control. And think about what we do a lot in daycare. It's like, in the door, breakfast, busy, because we're clearing the breakfast away. Now on to the next room because we're going to do this. Now we're clearing that away because it's snack time now, and we're clearing that away now because you must go to the toilet. We're doing this now because we're now going outside. Those children sometimes must just feel as if they're being pushed from sort of pillar to post. So it's about trying to introduce sort of as much choice as you can for them. A few slides here, just building resilience, just about how you can do it. We've sort of chatted, promoting the healthy risk taking, not always stepping in as the adult and doing it for them, teaching them to develop those skills, labeling their emotions. Oh, you're feeling sad. Oh, you're feeling angry. My favorite one that ever came back from school was that I made my child feel angry on the inside. So they were obviously just wanting to kind of hit me, whatever I must have said that day, but it was that's how they labeled their emotion. I made them feel angry on the inside. We role model that we have good coping skills and good strategies and what we kind of sort of do. And we admit if we make mistakes, and we let them see that it's okay to make mistakes, that's not the end of the world. And, for all of you, and I think the majority of you are all still hands-on, there's nothing worse than seeing a child dropping something and they actually physically shake with fear, because they're obviously growing up in a household where you don't drop things, or you don't make a mess, or you do things a certain way. So it's about, oh, silly me, drop the glass, don't worry, this is how we brush it up. Do you want to help me brush it up? That's okay. This is how we put it in the bin. Letting them say that those things are okay. It's nothing to get upset about. So just want to show you another quick video here.
Resilience is not some magical quality. It's something that really can be built, even in difficult circumstances.
The key active core ingredient to building resilience are the relationships the kids have to others who care about them.
Of course, families play a very important role, but nobody raises children in isolation. We have a huge amount of research to show the powerful impacts of teachers, coaches, other adults in the community with whom children have a chance to develop relationships, who play that critical supportive role of building resilience. As a result of responsive interaction, children build simple skills of coping and adapting. How to stop crying, how to regulate your behavior, being able to defer gratification.
You have an adaptive toolkit that allows you at moments of stress or challenge to bring out a number of potential skills that allow you to get through
it. As children get older, the sophistication of those skills increases. Being able to monitor situations, solve problems. The way we as a society can nurture the development of resilience is to help communities to pay more attention to building the capabilities of the adults who care for children and provide the supports they need to tip the scales toward more positive life outcomes.
And then when communities say, we want to be an active part of crafting the solution, to really understand what's necessary to produce the resilience, that's when the ball gets rolling.
Resilience building capacity building is really in everyone's interest, and everyone reaps the benefits when we do that well.
Just a very short video. And I just thought it was quite a nice one. Again, be a nice one to show staff at a team meeting. Just that notion of resilience can be built upon, you know, and our role as teachers, that importance of sort of relationships. And it really is just teaching children how they're going to cope with things. Oops. Okay. So that's that third section finished as well. So hopefully everybody can read that okay. And then I'm going to sort of take you into the last kind of bit. So review how current research on well-being and resilience promotes the safeguarding of children. So we've talked through a few things there and the ACEs. And 3.2, review and evaluate how children's well-being and resilience are supported in your own work setting. So what you're thinking about what you guys are doing, you know, what do you do to promote resilience? You know, I've started to give you an example, children putting on their own coats, buttering their own toast, you know, get a good list of all those things that you're doing. Are you giving them choices? And there's probably quite a bit you can be looking at. And then 3.3 and 3.4, you know, I want you to sort of think about, you know, what product evidence can you show me in the workplace? You know, so is it you've created some resources and at every monthly meeting you've taken staff through another sort of area of abuse, or did you organise for everybody to go and do the ACEs training? And just how have you sort of supported staff? Can I see that through your staff supervisions that you're asking them? You know, who is the safeguarding officer? Are you asking them what if questions? You know, what would you do if a child come in with a bruise on their thigh? You know, does that make sense? So it's just about where are you going to start gathering up this evidence just over the next 6 months. It's not something for you to rush out now, but just something, a drip, drip, drip effect, so that I can see that evidence over a period of time. So that's us. We've kind of looked at the questions with those 3 learning outcomes, which are on the next page here. So we were looking at the impact of current legislation. We've touched on it. We've chatted then about the review of policies and procedures, and you are going to do your audit for standard 1 and standard 2. And we've started to look at this whole notion of well-being and resilience and what it means, and potentially what we could maybe be doing in the workplace, what we're already doing, or maybe new things that we could be doing as well. So we're definitely good for time. So we're going to be wrapped up well before 9:30. What I'm going to get you to do here now is I'll put it into the chat. I have a Google link just with a few questions about some of the stuff we've covered tonight and maybe been looking at. And I just sort of, if everybody could take a few minutes and fill it in, there's no big rush. Get yourself a cup of tea, or if you want to stretch your leg for 5 minutes, there's no big rush here. Yep, I've seen somebody's just put in about the link and the WhatsApp group for that online training. Yeah, I'll put all that in then for you, but it'll be on your PowerPoint too, but I'll put it into the WhatsApp group. So that is the link then for the Google form. So if you open up the chat, you should be able to just click on it. And what I'll do is I'll throw it into the WhatsApp here as well, just in case any of you aren't able to pick it up from the chat, because I know sometimes it just doesn't always work for everybody. And if you are happy enough, what I'm going to do, because that's tonight's class over, bar any questions you guys might have, I'm going to stop the recording. So anything from here on in won't be recorded. So hang on.